Okay, begin.
Okay, good evening, class. This is Group 9 presenting Chapter 12 on Leadership, Power, and Influence. Next slide, please. So, my group consists of myself, Akila Anthony, Tammy Bahari, and Leal Vida. Next slide, please. I will be taking you through the first few slides with the topics of transformational versus transactional leadership, charismatic leadership, power, influence, and leadership, the five types of leadership power, responses to the use of power, the role of dependency, and control over resources. Next slide, please. So, transformational versus transactional leadership. Transactional leadership refers to the transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers. Transactional leaders can reward followers with bonuses or an increase in pay. However, the follower must first meet the specific objectives or perform certain duties. The exchange occurs once the followers receive their recompense or their job performance while the leader benefit from the completion of task. Transformational leadership is characterized by a leader's ability to bring about significant change in both followers and the organization. It is based on the personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than an exchange process between leaders and followers. Transformational leadership is a leadership style that can inspire positive change in those who follow. Transformational leadership differs from transactional leadership in four important areas. Transformational leadership is distinguished by its capacity to effect substantial change in followers as well as the organization. Transformational leadership develops followers into leaders. Transformational leadership evaluates the concerns of followers from the lower level physical needs. They also inspire followers to go beyond their own self interest for the good of the group. They paint a vision of a desired future state and communicates it in a way that makes the pain of change worth the effort. Next slide, please. Now I will tell you some information about charismatic leadership. Charismatic leadership is an approach where leaders leverage their charm and persuasiveness to influence others. Since they have a lot in common, charismatic leaders are also referred to as transformative leaders occasionally. Focus and audience are where they diverge the most. It is the goal of charismatic leaders to improve the existing status quo, whereas transformational leaders concentrate on changing companies to fit their vision. Transformational leaders is also known to boost followers' participation, whereas charismatic leadership usually inspire both awe and obedience in them. Continuing with charismatic leadership, researchers have shown a significant deal of interest in charismatic and transformational leadership. The fact that both charismatic and transformational leadership are heavily dependent on the leader's personal influence rather than a position of authority best owned by an organization is one of their distinguishing features. On the following slide, you will see a table that differentiates characteristic char- charismatic leadership from non-charismatic leadership. Okay. Many transformative leaders possess charisma, which is which is the apparently natural capacity to arouse followers' curiosity, adore, and affection. But whereas transformational leadership aims to boost followers' participation, Charismatic leaderships usually inspire both or an audience to them, while non charismatic leaders recognize the significance of successfully integrating organizational goals with current facility. Charismatic leaders often excite their staff to perform. Unlike non charismatic leadership, unlike non charismatic leaders recognized sorry, unlike non charismatic leaders are persistive to the ones and to the ones to the wants and capacities of their followers on an emotional level. Although non charismatic leaders might not have as much power, charismatic leaders are able to organize their teams any way they see fit. Next slide, please. Power, influence, and leadership. When studying leadership, the concepts of power and influence are critical. While influence is the capacity to modify others, the, the capacity to modify other people's views on a situation, power is the authority to force others to behave in the way they may not otherwise. When you think of powerful individuals, you can consider high ranking executive in businesses and sports, politicians, or entertainment figures. However, Bill Strickland draws our attention to another form of power, the kind that results from having a strong sense of conviction about a concept or idea and thinking it can come to pass. Next slide, please. There are five types of leader power: reward power, cursive power, expert power, ligament power, and lastly, referent power. Reward power. This type of power results from having the ability to reward others. For instance, official benefits like wage rises or promotion could be available to designated leaders. Large sums of resources are also distributed downhill from top executives in organizations. Coercive power is the reverse of reward power. It alludes to the authority to impose penalties or suggest them, having the authority to fire or demote employees, reprimand them, or withhold pay raises, give supervisors coercive power. Expert power. This power diverges from a leader's unique expertise or understanding of the duties carried out by followers. When a leader possesses actual expertise, followers follow their advice due to their enhanced understanding. Ligament power is the power best owed by an official position inside an organization. For example, once a person has been selected as a supervisor, most workers understand that they are obligated to follow his or her direction with respect to work activities. And lastly, referent power. This type of power results from a leader's personality traits that inspire followers to identify with, respect, and look up to them so they can aspire to be like them. Next slide, please. Next slide. Responses to the use of power. The three distinct outcomes that may result from the use of power are compliance, resistance, and commitment. Compliance refers to following the direction of a person with power, regardless of how much agreement there is with that person's direction. Resistance is the act of obeying orders and deliberating, avoiding carrying out instructions. Commitment is when a follower adopts a leader's viewpoint and enthusiastically carry out instructions. Next slide, please. Here you will see an example. An employee may respond to a manager's use of position power with either compliance or resistance. However, personal power is usually met with commitment, as displayed in the above diagram. Next slide. The role of dependency. A person can gain control when they are in possession of something others want and need. Power is a function of dependence. That is, the greater individual, B's, dependent on individual A. The greater power A will have over B. People in organizations gain power because other people depend on them. The information, resources, cooperation, and so forth. The more people depend on someone, the greater that person's power is. Notably, when followers are dependent on leaders, leaders may choose to use their positional power. In situations where leaders are dependent on followers, leaders may have to rely on their personal power. Next slide, please. As showcased by the above diagram, a leader's power may vary between low and high based on the importance, scarcity, and irreplaceability of resources. Next slide, please. Control over resources. Dependency within organizations is related to a person's control over resources. People in the organization must perceive the resource to be important. This is, if nobody wants what you got, it is not going to create dependency. Scarcity refers to whether the resource is easy or difficult to obtain. A resource that is difficult or expensive to acquire is more valuable and creates more dependency than one that is widely available. Non-substitutably Non-substitutably means that leaders or employees with control over resources with no available substitute will have more power. I now pass you on to Tammy with the next few slides.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony. Good night, everyone. Tonight, we are going to talk about sources of leader power in organizations, strategic contingencies, interdepartmental dependency, control over information, organizational centrality, coping with uncertainty, and increasing power through political activity. Next slide, please. Sources of leader power in organization. There are 5 types of power that are derived from either formal positions or the leader's personal qualities. The strategic contingencies theory identifies power resources not linked to the specific person or position. This plays in the overall functioning of the organization. Next slide, please. This slide shows the 5 parts of leadership power we will be discussing. They are interdepartmental dependency, control over information, organizational centrality, coping with uncertainty, increasing power through political activity. Next slide, please. Interdepartmental dependency is an important source of leadership power in many organizations. It shows the relationship between materials, resources, and information that may flow between departments in one direction. In such cases, leadership in the department receiving the resources have less power than those in the department providing them. For example, the managers in the production department in a cigarette factory near Paris has less power than the maintenance department. The production of cigarettes was a routine process. The machinery was automated. The maintenance department employees and their supervisors were responsible for repairing the automated machines, which was a complex task, and they had many years of experience fixing unpredictable breakdowns on the assembly line. As a result of this, the production managers became dependent on the maintenance department. Next slide, please. Control over information. Despite the trend towards greater ownership and broader information sharing, the fact remains that some people will almost always have access to more information than others. Control over information, which includes both access to information and control over how and to whom it is shared, as an important source of power for leaders. Next slide, please. You can go back, sorry about that. You can go back. Sorry about that. For example, J.S. Suju, he was an immigrant from India who served as chairman of Sovereign Bangkok for more than 15 years. Suju has negotiated more than 27 acquisitions. They have both transformed and troubled savings and loan in a large regional bank and strengthened his own power over shareholders and board members. In the most recent acquisitions, he structured the deal in a way that weakened the power of investors critically of the company's management and transformed the troubled savings and loan into a large regional bank. He also engineered the deal to weaken the power of investors who were critical to top management and wanted more control. Insiders say Suju often withholds information from the board or waits until the last minute to inform them in order to achieve his objectives. Does everyone understand the slides that was presented so far? Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Next slide, please. Organizational centrality. This reflects the role of a leader or department in the main activity of an organization. One measure of centrality is the extent to which the work of the leader's department influences the final output of the organization. In a company like Intel, which is highly technological oriented, engineers have a high degree of power because the company depends on them to maintain the technical superiority of its products. In contrast, in a company like Procter & Gamble or Kimberly-Clark, engineers have a high degree of power because marketers are usually the most powerful group of employees in these companies. The role of a manager or department in the main operation of a company. Centrality is associated with more power because it reflects contribution to the organization. Next slide, please. Coping with uncertainty. Dealing with uncertainty refers to the ever-changing environment that creates uncertainty and complexity for leaders. In the face of this uncertainty, leaders have little information about appropriate courses of action. Leaders in departments who are good at dealing with this uncertainty increase their power. For example, when market research staff accurately predict changes in demand for new products, they gain power and prestige because they have reduced a critical uncertainty. Next slide, please. An example of this would be HCA and Atia Inc. The employees who are able to predict these changes in demand for the new products are rewarded. HCA's legal department has been instrumental in absorbing critical uncertainties for the company. When a Medicare scandal was uncovered in 1996, the legal department immediately sprang into action to help the company weather the storm and develop clear policies and compliance programs to ensure that similar legal problems would not happen again. The legal department also played a crucial role in negotiating a series of mergers and acquisitions that enable ACL to grow in size and power and become one of the leading companies in the industry. To grow in size and power and turn the tables on large insurance companies like Atia Inc. in Houston. HCA now operates 10 hospitals, giving it a 22% market share in that city. HCA officers have begun warning doctors and physicians that they will terminate their contract with Atia, the country's largest health insurer, of the company does not meet their demands or price increase. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Increasing power through political activity. People who want to increase their power make sure that their activities are visible and appreciated by others. The acquisitions and use of power is largely a political process. Politically skilled leaders strive to understand the viewpoints, needs, desires, and goals of others and use their knowledge to influence people to act in ways that enable the leader to achieve their goals for the team or organization. An example of this would be the consultant Deborah Burnton, who helped executives at companies such as Mattel, Hewlett Packard, and Pepsi Cola develop their executive presence. This is the impact you have when you walk into a room. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
That's the end of your slides.
Oh. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm now going to pass you on to Ms. Vidal, and she'll continue the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Leah Vidal, and I will be taking you through the following slides, which will discuss tactics for asserting leader influence and ethical considerations in using power and politics. Here you see an overview of each item I will be introducing you to. Tactics for asserting leader influence. Leaders use their power, and they do this in order to get stuff done, which includes implementing decisions, facilitating change, and accomplishing organizational goals. To assert their influence over others, they may use a combination of the following tactics. Rational persuasion. This is when a leader relies on facts, data, and logical arguments to help others see why a proposed idea or request is the best way to complete certain tasks or accomplish a desired goal. This tactic works because most people trust in facts and analysis. It can be used to direct influence upward towards superiors, downward to subordinates, or horizontally to colleagues. Rational persuasion is most effective when a leader has technical expertise and knowledge related to this issue, or in other words, expert power, though referent power can also be used. I would like to stop here to tell you a story of Chloe and Bob. Chloe was a new recruit who began working in the IT department at a firm. She noticed the company had not yet implemented a new technology that would make operations easier. She found out that it was because Bob, a senior manager at another department, was blocking its use. Chloe took it upon herself to speak with those close to Bob to get an understanding of why he was against the technology. When she understood Bob's issue, she then used facts and analysis, to construct a logical argument. Following this, she approached Bob and then presented her argument. Bob, accept, Bob, Bob accepted the new technology. So Chloe used rational persuasion to convince Bob that the company should adopt the new tech, since it would benefit the organization as a whole. She used this tactic to assert her influence upward towards Bob, who was a senior manager at the company. She demonstrated her expert power in regards to the technology. But what also impressed Bob was the initiative she took to persuade him to use the new tech and how affable she did it. Therefore, Chloe also tapped into her referent power. Even though Chloe was just a new employee, she displayed leadership qualities, which is why she is a senior head at a department today. It should be noted that rational arguments cannot always be backed up with facts and figures. In these instances, people would have to believe in the leader's credibility to accept his or her argument. A leader's credibility will depend on their track record of being honest, reliable, and rational, as well as on the sensibility of their past decisions. All these things lend credibility to a leader. Have you ever enjoyed saying no to someone you don't like? This is because as humans, it is easier for us to say yes to someone we like than to someone we do not like. Regardless of culture, people are normally responsive to friendliness and consideration. When a leader is genuinely caring, fair, trustworthy, and respectful, many are more willing to assist and support this leader by complying to his or her requests. Most people will want a leader who makes them feel good about themselves by acknowledging their efforts with compliments or praise. In fact, most people remember how you make them feel. If while in your presence you make others feel good about themselves and their abilities, then they would naturally want to be in your presence and would more likely be willing to fulfill your requests. This is why a leader's likability is important to him or her achieving his or her goals. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. One way leaders gain power is by having access and control over things which others may perceive as valuable. A great way of transforming that power into influence is by sharing what you have, be it time, resources, services, or emotional support. The unwritten law of reciprocity refers to the common notion held by humans that favors should be reciprocated. This means that leaders who do favors for others can expect favors in return. Leaders should lead by example. So if leaders require followers to be cooperative and sharing, then they must first exhibit such behavior to encourage their subordinates to do the same. I like to backtrack. Um, I like to ask a question. Can you recall a time when you were in need and someone helped you out? And then you made a mental note to repay the favor. In other words, you felt indebted to return the favor. And this is what this feeling of indebtedness is what the law of reciprocity is referring to. Onwards, the rule of reciprocity highlights the concept of exchange, which is trading something of value to obtain something you desire or want in return. This concept serves as a basis for all other influence tactics, as nearly all tactics work due to the leader trading something of value for something in return. Develop allies. Allies are people who can help leaders realize their goals. This is why constructing a network of loyal and supportive allies is vital to any leader. Communication plays a pivotal role in the building of ally networks. Leaders tend to take the time to talk with followers and other leaders in informal settings. The purpose of doing this is to understand the needs and concerns of others, address any misunderstandings, and clarify the leader's point of view. In expanding their networks, leaders may endeavor to meet more people of whom they can recruit. Also, Leaders may choose to expand their networks via the hiring, transfer, and promotion process. Once allies have been identified, they are then placed into key positions where they can assist the leader in achieving his or her goals. This is where the rule of reciprocity comes into play. And as I go along and introduce you to each tactic, you'll see that some of them, they are related, interrelated. So what this means is that if a leader places you into a key position, then when the time arises, that leader would expect a favor in return. According to a recent study, network building positively impacts followers' perceptions of a leader's abilities and performance, as well as the performance of the work unit. It is important to note that if power building is ever perceived as self-serving, then key people may become alienated. I'd like to illustrate this tactic using a historical K-drama plotline. The Choi family, who got into business to increase their family's wealth and power, is now targeting the chosen dynasty. Is everybody hearing me? Hello?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Um, okay, where was I? The Choi family, who got into business to increase their family's wealth and power, is now targeting the chosen dynasty in order to amass even more wealth and power. To do this, they would need to develop an ally network. First, they would hold private, informal meetings with one or more of the king's top advisors and high-ranking officials. The aim of these meetings is to persuade the officials to become loyal to the Choi agenda and hence do their bidding. Next, they would infiltrate the palace by enrolling their family members or those loyal to the family to serve in entry-level positions within the palace. These family members who have infiltrated are expected to advance in rank and hold top positions. The infiltrates would accomplish this by helping each other, in addition to receiving help from family members outside of the palace and palace officials loyal to the choice. With such a well-built and expanded ally network, the choice can succeed at increasing their family's net worth, while causing the king to act in their favor via the control of his advisors. In this way, the Choi's would increase their power and control over the entire kingdom. Thus, their goal of increasing their wealth and power would be achieved. Anytime a key person within the Choi's network deems the family's aim as self-serving, then the realization of the family's goal is in trouble. Ask for what you want. It is imperative for leaders to ask for what they want, since if they do not ask, they seldomly receive. Therefore, leaders must clearly outline what they want and be courageous enough to ask for it. When a leader's vision, goals, and desired changes are well defined and communicated, only then will a firm be able to fulfill the leader's wishes. Sometimes a leader's direct appeal may be accepted simply because no one else has any better alternatives or when other options are ambiguous. Remember the principle of scarcity. This principle of scarcity asserts that when things become less available, they become more desirable and therefore will be in high demand. For example, if there was a shortage of chicken and Fine Choice were to make their customers aware of this information via their WhatsApp chat, then this disclosure would prompt customers to buy more chicken than they normally would. If Fine Choice customers were to learn that the public had not yet learned of this shortage, then this would heighten their need to make their purchases quicker. So Fine Choice would have gotten more sales at a quicker rate thanks to the exclusive release of information. Leaders can use exclusive information to their benefit also. In fact, leaders can use the selective release of exclusive information to support their proposals since people value being privy to exclusive information. Hence, letting people know that they are getting a sneak peek at information captures their interest and makes them more likely to align themselves with the leader's position and facilitate his or her requests. Extend formal authority with credibility and expertise. Although legitimate authorities can be particularly influential, influence depends primarily on personal power rather than position power. For this reason, leaders who have demonstrated that they are knowledgeable, credible, honest, and straightforward inspire trust and exert greater influence over others than those who only issue orders. Therefore, a leader should use his legitimate power in tandem with the six other tactics previously explored: rational persuasion, likability, reciprocity, ally networks, direct appeal, and scarcity to successfully reinforce his or her influence over others. Ethical considerations. Power and influence can be used to accomplish important organizational goals, but power can be abused. Personalized versus socialized leaders. A leader's approach to the use of power determines whether he or she is a personalized leader or a socialized one. Personalized leaders are typically selfish, impulsive, and use power for their own self-centered needs and interests rather than for the good of the organization. Socialized leaders use power in the service of higher goals that will benefit others and the whole organization. Unethical use of power. Sexual harassment is an unethical use of power that is also illegal. Incidents of sexual harassment arise in the workplace due to dependency. Within an organization, personnel usually rely on others, especially leaders, for the supply of resources, which may include information, cooperation, and in some cases, even their jobs. Every dependent must agree to sexual favors or tolerate sexually intimidating or threatening comments to access resources, then he or she is being personally violated. Whether the leader, excuse me, whether the leader grants or withholds the resources. Many organizations have been pressured by legal authorities to develop policies and procedures that protect their employees from sexual harassment and offer outlets for lodging complaints. While sexual harassment is clearly unethical, there may arise situations that cannot be so easily interpreted. In these instances, leaders may sometimes find it difficult to distinguish between ethical and unethical uses of power and politics. The diagram on the following slide contains guidelines that can assist in one making an ethical choice. So what you're looking at is the guidelines for ethical action. When deciding if an action is ethical or not, there are some questions you need to ask. Question 1. Is the action consistent with the organization's goals rather than being motivated purely by self-interest? Question 2. Does the action respect the rights of individuals and groups affected by it? Question 3. Does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? Question 4. Would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? By answering these questions, you should arrive at an ethical choice. In conclusion, it is paramount that leaders be conscious of the ethical responsibilities associated with having power and be mindful to use their power to help others rather than to hurt. Leaders should avoid trying to get their own way and instead aspire to build long-term productive relationships that would be beneficial to achieving organizational goals. Here are our references. Feedback. Thank you for your time and attention. We have reached the end of our presentation. We would like to hear from you. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? No? Okay, then this is the end of our presentation.